Anybody has any issues with being recorded or any concerns around that, then please do let me know as soon as possible after the meeting. We will be sharing it and making it available to people to watch afterwards, as there was quite a few people that couldn't join this session. And the other thing, if you want to speak, do raise your hand, wave it about if we're not getting your attention or you're not getting our attention. There is quite a lot of people on this call, so we are covering a couple of pages of folk, so we'll do our best to get to you, and also use the chat function at the side as well if that's helpful and you want to just put your question into that or share any information. So the format of the session will be that Graham Finnie from the facilities team at Sport Scotland has very kindly joined us, and he's going to give a presentation based on the guidance and advice for reopening facilities, which Sport Scotland have recently published. And then we'll follow that up with a Q&A session, so if anyone has any questions around the reopening of facilities, then please do ask. Obviously, Sport Scotland are a funder, but this session is primarily based around facilities and reopening facilities and the practical and physical implications. So it's not really an intended session for talking about funding. If you do have any questions about funding, we can maybe follow them up offline.
Yep.
So Jane from Social Firms Scotland is also on the call. She's going to be helping to monitor the chat and just monitoring the Q&A. Just as a quick update for you, some of you know, some of you might not know, but Social Firms Scotland and SEN Scot are merging. Discussions around that have been ongoing for quite some time, but it is hoped that the new entity will be up and running by the 1st of July. So we will have a new name. It'll be SE Connect Scotland, and Jane and I will be working for the same organisation, hence why she's here today. We've been working together quite a lot through Social Enterprise Reset, and I think the new entity will really reflect what we do in terms of connecting peers, connecting to relevant third sector or support organisations, facilitating the networks, and connecting with Scottish Government as well. So our support to you won't change. The Sport SEN will still exist. Jane currently coordinates the employability SEN, so many of you on here will know Jane already through that. That will continue to exist. And really, if anything, our support will be better because we will be better aligned and better connected ourselves. If you do have any questions about the merger, then again, if you want to contact me offline to talk about that, that's no problem. All right, so we'll just get on with this session, and I'll pass you over to Graham for his presentation, and then we'll follow on with the Q&A, if that's all right, unless anyone has any questions right now. Yep, all good. All right, thanks, Graham.
Awesome. Thanks, Judith. Afternoon, everybody. So really, this is a follow-on from our first set of guidance that we published right at the start of this scenario. And what we started to look at was how you could decommission your facility to make it easier for when we come back. Now, in that guidance, we were trying to get across things like check your building insurance check your water services, things like that, because prolonged absence from a building can cause significant problems. Now, some people might have been able to get into the building and run the taps for 5 minutes and whatnot. Some of it might be more difficult. I was speaking to the guys at Murrayfield, and they've got a crew going around the stadium, and they're running taps for 5 minutes. When it comes to the end of the day, they put a cable wrap on one tap and come back to that facility and keep going. It's like painting the Forth Road Bridge. So it is an issue, but things can be done if you haven't to do it, and we can. The advice we've got is pretty clear on that. If you've got pitches and sports courts, then obviously they needed, if you could, to be maintained during this period as well. But if that's not been possible, you can manage to bring them back to use again pretty quickly if you know what you're doing. And obviously PewTag, for anybody who's operating a swimming pool, PewTag had some really good guidance for decommissioning, and they've also got some stuff coming out with Swim England and others to look at recommissioning pools and looking at how you can get back to operations. So in our new guidance, we've split it into 4 areas. Really the intention of bringing it out this early was to make sure that people were thinking ahead. So before anybody gets back into your building and starts thinking about sport, we need to plan on how they're going to do that. The things in there is looking at your management, whether it's the management team, the board or whatever. You need to think about establishing a COVID response group, because it's an awful lot to think about for just a management group. You need to have individuals who can actually take and run with this type of work and then report up to your committee or boards. You need to develop reinstatement plans. You need to be thinking about developing and updating your operational policies to do with the new standards you're going to have to meet, and you're going to have to look at your risk assessments and potential PPE requirements as well. The preparation stage is actually about getting in and making your buildings ready. There's an awful lot of stuff in there: cleaning, hygiene, social distancing, and then the protection stage is making sure that your facility stays safe, as well as participants who are in there. And the review stage is really important. That's something that we know, looking at the Scottish Government plans, they've actually predicted a spike in COVID cases again. That may or may not happen, we don't know, but it's a prediction, and we have to be aware that we might have to move back a couple of stages in the process. So if you can have a review process in place, it'll allow you to move forward as well as backwards, depending on what happens with this situation. So in going into a bit more detail, I talked about the planning phase and the responsibilities of management. The impact on your facility during shutdown. Water services, if you've not managed to run the water services, you will need to get them checked and tested for various waterborne viruses, whether it's Legionella or Cryptosporidium or any others. They'll need to be, and if they do need to be checked and flushed and cleaned, there are companies that can do that. You need to get your gas services checked, as well as your electric, fixed wire and pack testing. With such a long period, you just don't know what's been going on. There's probably also I need to consider if where you are, whether or not there's been any issues of damp coming in. You know, if a building's not had the heating on or not been operated, all sorts of things could appear that you've never noticed before. It's also a good opportunity to do tasks that you might not have had a chance to do when you've been fully operational. You need to think about the hygiene requirements, the health and safety requirements. You need to think about the social distancing implications for your facility. You need to think about programming. So how you've been programming before won't be what we do in the new normal. Some of the things we've seen from New Zealand, Holland and other places, they have buffers in between each group. And depending what your facility is and how it operates, you might need to clean everything in between each group. So the buffer in between each group is not the time for people to come in and out. It's the time for people to go out, clean everything, the next group come in, and then do your activity. So actually it's going to have a significant impact on your potential income generation through that as well, because you are going to lose time in there. So there are things that you're going to have to think about. You're also going to have to communicate that to everybody. In terms of the preparation phase, there's a lot there. There's an awful lot there. You know, I mentioned inspecting the condition of the facility. One thing for some groups, you'll have to remove any equipment and furniture that can't be safely cleaned and disinfected. So it might be that it's fine now, but if we are still going through the situation where we don't have a vaccine and the track and trace isn't effective yet, then anything that could potentially carry the virus has to be removed if it can't be cleaned and disinfected safely. You have to identify high traffic points where they can be isolated and removed from being an issue, or just make sure that they're regularly cleaned. you're going to have to review ventilation systems, check the alarms in your safety systems. Depending on the size of the facility you have, you might need to consider what checks will need to be done. The other thing, and it's from speaking to England Hockey, you need to check with insurers that they're happy to let you open. There's a few cases potentially down south where the insurers may actually say no, not until next phase or whatever stage they're more comfortable with. So that might have an impact. And then just thinking about some other things, if you're operating a facility at a different capacity, is it financially viable for you to open with the current conditions that we need to have in place to maintain hygiene, health and safety, social distancing and all those types of things? The cleaning I've already touched on, but it is going to have to be much more in depth. Deep cleans have been talked about, but it's then maintaining that deep cleaning standards on the areas of high traffic, those main areas. You're going to have to log all those cleaning processes. You're going to have to make sure that it's very visible for your users so that it gives them comfort. You're going to have to trial that cleaning as well to make sure it can be done in between each group and at the end of every day. And as we move through the stages of relaxing lockdown, and we're allowed into toilet areas and shower areas, it's going to have to change again and have to be maintained. The information we have at the moment is that the virus sits on hard surfaces for anywhere between 3 and 5 days. So that's something that has to be considered when we're going through our cleaning checks and cleaning our facilities. The hygiene and the health and safety, obviously you need to review all your health and safety plans. They'll have to be updated for any new procedures that would be put in place. And the hygiene. So one thing we got from talking to the Scottish Leisure Networking group was that maybe in some groups and some facilities you might want to create a charter where your users and your clubs that use your facilities might want to take more responsibility for the health and hygiene. So whilst you might be providing hand washing and hand sanitising areas at each entrance, they might want to take some responsibility as well and bring in their own hand sanitisers, antiseptic wipes and things to clean the areas down that they've used. So they're just some things that we've seen from other areas and other people that might help. And it's really just looking at how you can then set the facility up with the social distancing and cleaning in mind. So the social distancing, it's not just going to be the 2 meters, it's 2 meters to any area that person might use. It's how do you get past the pieces of kit in your current gym areas? If you can't do that, then you have to have a one-way system in place. When we talk about access and egress, how many entrances are to the actual site? Where's the front gate from the street? How do you get people in safely? Do you need to reduce the car parking capacity to make sure that people maintain safe social distancing, getting in and out of their cars? And what does that look like for you? Can you, or do you have to maybe shut your car park? Does then that have an impact on the traffic outside? If you're having groups of kids dropped off, do you have 2 accesses to the site? So you can have one group getting dropped off here and the other getting picked up at the other side? Or is drop off and pick up for one group at one access and the next group coming in is at the other side? There's no more considerations there when you're thinking about that as well, as queuing cars or you maybe need to inform those people that they shouldn't get out of their cars and have a chat. That they are only there to drop off and pick up. You maybe you want people to be reminded that they're not there to gather socially, so that we don't end up with any potential issues of conflict. Because some people will have their perception of what social distancing looks like, but that might be different from someone else. And if that creates a bit of tension with people getting out of the cars and things that drop off and pick up, you just want to avoid it. So there's considerations there. And the information, there's one thing we picked up from New Zealand. They're now moving into another phase of lockdown, but a few weeks ago they were already starting to think about the complacency that might start to happen with people. They need to think about reminding people to wash the hygiene, washing hands and things like that, wiping down equipment after use. They were at that stage, they were still on individual equipment for sport, so each person was using their own ball or any other pieces of kit they had. So all these things about reminding people, it's about putting posters up, changing the posters as the advice changes and when it changes, and keeping your workforce informed as well. You know, your workforce are probably more important in this because they're the people that are going to have to help you implement these changes in your facilities. Now, that workforce might be professional, it might be volunteers, but they all need support. They all need support to implement these measures. And once we move on into the next phase, which is once the facility's open and you've got people coming through, it's making sure you're understanding what your groups understand what you can do under the governing body sports guidelines, the size of those groups, what they can do within the sports operations. As I said, in New Zealand, they were still at the point where basketball were using one ball per person, and those balls and any other equipment were getting cleaned by the coaches and participants at the end of each session for the next group coming in. You need to maintain records of users. And obviously, there may or may not be track and trace procedures in place by the Scottish Government, but you need to be implementing those changes as well. You need to make sure you know who's in your facility and how you're going to notify if there's any cases of participants in your facilities. You need to make sure your cleaning plans in place are sufficient, that they actually work for the groups that you've got coming in and out. And if you do need to change and modify those regimes, then do so and make appropriate changes to your programming for your users to keep them safe and keep yourself and your staff safe and your volunteers. The social distancing measures, again, as they change, you might need to look at how they're laid out in your facility, additional posters to remind people of the changes, whether it's to decrease them like they have in New Zealand and other countries, or if we do have a spike, take them back up to 2 metres. And all the while, we have to communicate that with everybody, as I said before. The participants coming in, any new groups, any new users, and depending on what marketing you're doing, how you're getting people into the facility. And the review stage. It sounds simple, but there'll be lots of different information coming forward. You might find examples from other areas of sport and physical activity that might inform you on how to review your operating procedures. You might get some good information from sports on how to change your operating procedures for those different areas and different sports. You'll need to review your risk assessments regularly, depending on what's happening across the country and in your local area, and what's happening with the announcement from Scottish Government on the health and hygiene aspects of what we're facing. The governing body plans will probably continue to change as the lockdown eases and we move to a return to sport, and how we rebuild that. So you're going to have to look at how those measures affect your facilities too, and it would just be wise to keep connections there and make sure that they're sending you all the updates, as well as the clubs and users that use your facilities. The cleaning plans, as I mentioned, the hygiene measures, the social distancing, and then as we look at this review, it's maybe thinking about long term. If there's another spike, what happens next year, and how you can maintain everything that you've put in place. Everything we've done to date has been gathering information. I've mentioned some of the sources. We've been working really closely with Sport England. We've been on web chats with the guys in New Zealand. We've gathered information from Australia and across Europe, from Holland and the like. We've had help from football and rugby and that as well. So there's an awful lot of information in there. It's not exhaustive. There's probably more that we're going to learn as we go along. There's other groups within Sport Scotland looking at how coaches and deliverers are going to be impacted by this. So hopefully with more guidance to help you with that later on. But as I said at the start, the reason for us pulling this together was to try and think about how you can get facilities ready prior to the participants and groups coming back, so that you're ready to go the minute you can open the doors, rather than opening the doors and spending potentially weeks getting ready to go again. Because I appreciate that there's a lot of groups who haven't got any income coming in right now and really need it soon. So I hope this is helpful. I hope that you get something out of it, and I hope that if you have had a chance to read our guidance, it makes more sense than what I've said right now. So I think what we'll do now is move on to any questions that anybody might have.
Thanks, Graham. Can you stop sharing your screen now so that we can get all the participants back up, and then I'll be able to see if anyone's...
I was just moving there, Judith.
Sorry.
There you go.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much for that overview. Really helpful. I thought there was some really, really useful bits of information in there from what you said, so I'm sure there's going to be heaps in the full guidance. I've actually got a question, so we can kick off with my question if you want, while while we're waiting for others. And there's one came through in the chat as well from Peter at the Key. But so my question, so you've been working with, I know that you've been talking to and working with Sport England and other countries around their guidance. And obviously your guidance is cognizant of the Scottish Government guidelines and regulations which they've set. And I was just wondering, is there any fundamental differences between some of the guidelines about reopening facilities in the other countries in the UK compared to in Scotland, or is it essentially all very similar stuff?
It's all very similar. It's all based on health and hygiene and social distancing. It's all based on the health department's guidance translated into a sporting context. I think the biggest difference is how the other countries have handled the lockdown and tackled the virus. That's the difference. You know, if we look at what's happening in New Zealand now, they've had no cases. They're now moving almost back to full normality. So I'll find out more. I've got a call in New Zealand next week. Hopefully they'll be able to tell us that things are still going well for them. I hope that is the case. But yeah, nothing is really different. It's just gathering that information and put it into a context for the Scottish Government guidance and a Scottish sporting context.
Okay, that's what I thought. I guess it's just because there's quite a lot of guidance kicking out for the UK right now as well, and I think it's quite conflicting and confusing for people at the minute when we hear England talking about guidance and Scotland talking about guidance for everything. So yeah,
I was on a call to the guys at Sport England yesterday, and they've stopped preparing notes. They're actually going to look at what has been produced by all the private operators, the UK Active, CLUK, and other groups. So there's lots of different pieces of information, which in England is far greater than it is in Scotland. They've got more groups and more private operators. So they're trying to gather that, collate it, and see where the differences are, and try and put it into some sort of checklist that allows people to digest it more readily. But we're lucky in Scotland, we don't have that issue.
Cool, thank you. And the question from Peter at the Key, which came through on the chat, was, I can't see Peter, but I'll just ask it anyway. Where does the 3 to 5 day survival of the virus come from?
It's hard surfaces. We were aware from the medical guys that it was three days for hard surfaces. We heard recently that might be up to 5. So I think in a risk analysis you would say, okay, we'll have to err on the side of caution. But regardless, if you're going to be in and out of a facility soon every day, you'll be cleaning it every day. So that's just what we know. You know, there was concerns that we didn't know what it was, but we did get some solid information that it's definitely 3 days. And we found some further information that it might be up to 5. But that's just on a risk assessment basis. We're now talking about 3 to 5 days.
And just talking about risk assessments there, Dan from our place Camelon in Tamford Hill, he's asking, have Sport Scotland produced any standard posters or template risk assessments?
Well, in the rush to get our guidance out, we do have a risk assessment template and it's being finalised. We hope to have that up on the website this week. We'll follow that with some other information. We're trying to make sure that we're not giving you information or resources that are targeting very large organisations like the big leisure trusts, and we're trying to make it as easy for clubs and community groups to use. But once that's up there, hopefully we can send out notifications to you that lets you know what's available.
Great, thanks. Chris, was it Chris Saunders? Did you have your hand raised? Your virtual hand? Yeah, I think so. Chris Saunders? I don't know if Chris is frozen.
I know, but he needs to unmute if he isn't.
I think he looks like he might have frozen. Okay, we'll come back to Chris. There was another question on the chat there as well, from Catherine Murray. Has anyone queried or found a solution to the dividing curtains use in sports halls? Catherine, do you want to say any more about that question?
Sorry, I was trying to remember which one to unmute. I use so many different virtual chats.
No worries.
I have a concern for our sports centre reopening in terms of attendance to classes. Our studios are quite small, so we were thinking of using the sports hall to do the classes instead. But what you just said about the fabrics and equipment that potentially absorb things, obviously a curtain is a porous surface. So is there any guidance on whether you fold them away and keep them away, keep the hall as open as possible, or use them? I'm just wondering for another opinion, really.
It's a very good question. It's probably one of those things that you would just try to mark them off as out of bounds. Because cleaning, if it's a fabric surface, then it'd be incredibly difficult to clean. What you could do, we saw some of the facilities in England were starting to fog clean. So that would get it cleaned initially, but to avoid contact with it, you could then mark it off as out of bounds with tape or posters or something. And that would then hopefully avoid people touching it and maybe leaning against it in some way, shape or form, leaning bags against it and stuff. You know, it's a similar thing for fixed barriers around pitches, courts and other things. You know, you see players warming up against these fixed barriers, so they'll need to be cleaned down and marked as off limits and then cleaned once a day. It's just part and parcel of sports facilities. There's a lot of surfaces that you're not going to be able to either get rid of or move and make safe. So you might actually have to consider how you can then mark them out of bounds. Does that help, Catherine?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Another question here on the chat from Gemma Simpson. If you have a case identified at a facility, what's the protocol? Should the facility be shut for a set length of time or just shut as soon as you can and deep clean?
That's another good one. I can't recall exactly, but I do remember seeing that the group or everybody that's been in the facility for that day should be contacted, track and trace, and they should isolate for 14 days. That's the current government guidance. In terms of facility, I imagine it would have to be shut until it's been fully cleaned, and that you can demonstrate through your cleaning procedures that it's safe to return.
Does that answer your question, Gemma?
Yeah, thanks very much.
There should be, in our guidance, there's links to the HSE and the Scottish Government, and they have information in there about cleaning requirements, I'm pretty sure.
Thanks. Who was that, Graham, sorry?
The HSE and the Scottish
Yeah.
Government, I'm pretty sure the links are in there.
Okay, thanks. Mary?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm Mary Burns from Accessible Tennis, and we are a nomadic club, so therefore we use different premises. Obviously tennis is open just now, the outdoor courts are open, and my concern is about toilet access, because toilet access, although they're open in Scotland, is not you can't get access to toilets. And when I look down south as well, I see they're further along the stage and there's guidelines there. But again, quite often toilets are not open. And I'm looking at that from players, but also from coaching, because from health and safety, my understanding as an employer, you must have toilet access if you're coaching, if you've got an employee. And I'm just wondering, I can't see any guidance. I've read through you're getting your facilities fit for sport, and I can't see anything really that refers to that, and I just wonder.
That sits with the Scottish Government. We had that inquiry from Bowles, and I'm just opening up my email to see if I can find the response we gave them. It's very clear in the Scottish Government guidelines about when these things will be open. So it's not Sport Scotland's role to advise on when facilities open. because Bowles had the same question, because there's also a number of clubs and facilities where to get to the playing surface you actually have to go through the building. So they were very clear about what that advice and guidance was. Yeah, so the Scottish Government guidance on the physical distancing states that the risk of transmitting the virus is greater indoors, and the virus could be transmitted by or to you when you touch surfaces. As a result, the Scottish Government guidance is clear that there is no access to indoor sports facilities permitted during phase 1. So the next phase is potentially when toilets will be open up, and that's when potentially other users can get back to those facilities. And that's very clear. Yeah, I know. I appreciate that it's not ideal for everyone, but it's very clear in terms of the health aspect of this for everyone.
I know it's clear in Scotland, but what I'm talking about, they're saying that there's coaching, and coaching, as far as I know, an employer you should have access to toilet facilities. So I know coaching has been set up in phase 1, and when I look down south in England, we're further on ahead, there seems to be issues there with regard to toilet access as well, and they're further on. And I'm just concerned that this will go on for some period of time with no toilet access. And I really just, well, clearly, if you're coaching, there's health and safety guidance. As far as I'm aware, you have to give employees toilet facilities, and I don't know how that conflicts with that. So
that's probably a legal question I can't answer, and it's probably a question for Health Protection Scotland. Right. And I think that's where that should be directed. I don't have the answer to that. I just got the clear guidance from Scottish Government on where sport and sports, in fact, all facilities are right now, is that there's no access to indoor facilities. Right.
So to contact Health Protection Scotland?
I think if you were looking for further answers, I don't know if this health emergency trumps the health and safety guidance you have there for coaches in a working environment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Kirsty Young, you have got a question as well about toilet and showering facilities.
Yeah, no, it's slightly different and more looking further down the line when we are allowed to open as a swimming pool. Should we be encouraging our customers not to use the showering and toilet facilities? It's really difficult as a pool. It's one of the main things you encourage people to do, shower before they get in, etc.
No,
is
absolutely.
that something
we are? Yeah, we're in talks with. We're talking all the time to the sports. I was on a meeting last week, I think it was, with Scottish Swimming, who are working with Swim England. They're taking the lead on producing the guidance for that. I've actually got an email in my inbox from Scottish Swimming looking at the current proposals they have. Potentially, you could be asking people to turn up and shower before they go in and out, but do it in the social distance way and just leave wet. That's one option. But it all depends on what stage we're at as to what point pools are allowed to open, and we're allowed to use changing rooms within a social distance operating procedure. So, listen, once those documents and procedures and scenarios have all been worked through, we'll get those up online along with the pew tag information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty. Another question on the chat here from Chris Saunders. Is there any information about how climbing centres are going to be cleaning their climbing walls?
Not yet, but it's an incredibly good question. I haven't actually had any information on that yet. I think that's going to have to be looked at differently. It's going to have to be looked at in a context of the sport in that environment. Everything we're doing is site specific. Everything we're talking about is site specific. Our guidance is very generic. You're going to have to apply it to your own site. And that's from access from the street all the way through to people participating and then how they leave. So with climbing, I'm pretty sure Mountaineering Scotland are going through the scenario planning right now with our guys, and they'll be trying to consider how that works. They're probably looking at how it's happening in other countries as well, so they can gather that information. But we've not looked at any specific sport details yet, so we'll see how that pans out.
Thanks, Graham. There's another question on the chat here from Peter Linton. What's the latest on when leisure centres are likely to be able to reopen? Any?
That is down to the Scottish Government and when they ease the guidance. I know we're talking to the main leisure centre operators, leisure trusts, and they're working on that right now. And they're looking at how they'll open any or all of their facilities and what facilities will be available to the public as well. So, no, it's down to the Scottish Government and the timing, and it's down to the operator as to when it's safe and what areas they can open safely, according to the Scottish Government guidelines.
Thanks, Graham. There's Peter. Peter, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, it's just, I understand that there's a general thing around this. The reason I'm asking is because all my team are furloughed just now, which means I've got to time, if I want to take them out of furlough, I've got to time the run for how much time I need to put all the cleaning and training and risk assessment, blah, 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 into place ahead of opening. I can't, in an ideal world, I'd start tomorrow morning or yesterday, but I can't do that, because if I do that, I'm breaking the other government regulations around about furlough. So it's a tricky, it's more than idle curiosity of knowing whether it's likely to be the end of August or the end of September or whatever.
And that's why I totally understand. Everybody's got the same. When you've got furlough staff, you get the same problem. It's when you take them off furlough. And honestly, there is no information coming to us about that from the Scottish Government. That's not a question we can answer. It is a very good point. I guess we are a couple of weeks or a week behind England, so maybe that's a steer, but not firm evidence of what might happen. I don't know if you guys are connected into the leisure networking group or anybody like that. They might have better connections from the chief execs of the larger local authority trusts. That's the only advice I can possibly give you. They might have a better steer on how they're doing it.
Thanks, Peter. There's another question has come through in the chat about advice on types of cleaning solutions. One thing I can say about that is that I've got a newsletter coming out tomorrow, and Ian from Banks of D, Ian Watson from Banks of D, he had sent some information about cleaning products that he recommends for fitness and gym facilities anyway, which I can't remember the name of, but I'm going to write about it tomorrow in the newsletter that comes out. I don't know. I thought Ian was on this call, but I can't see him.
I can see him. He's definitely there.
Is he?
Yeah.
Ian, did you want to come in?
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Hear me there?
I still can't see you.
So the
You hear me there?
So I can hear you, Ian. Jude just can't see you.
Okay.
Don't know what your information is, but we've been told that it's just standard cleaning products. If that advice changes, or if you get anything different, it'd be great to hear.
I think the product that we are using just now is called, I think it's Evans EC4. You get that in a concentrate bottle that dilute into, many different. You just buy the trigger sprays and use it like diluting juice. So now the guidance on that is that you spray it any of your hard surfaces or equipment. You leave that to contact for 30 seconds and then you wipe off. So we found that quite effective. We were using that prior to shutdown, and we've obviously got a load more trigger sprays in preparation for opening now.
Thanks, Ian. I can see you now. That's great. I don't know if anybody else has got any types of cleaning products that they found particularly useful that they want to share, but certainly we can share that with people after the meeting if anybody does have anything, or in future come across anything that they start using that they found to be really good. Does that answer your question, Fiona, for now?
Yeah, thank you.
No worries, thank you. Any other questions? I can't. Oh, I think Danielle McKinnon actually had a question. Danielle, did you want to come in and ask your question?
Well, I have two actually within the other ones. So the first thing is we got some funding for masks because we've not closed through COVID. We still had maybe 30, 40 people attending on a rota system. You know, we're unable to furlough. We've got animals and 2 sites which go between 50 acres between them. So it's just an impossibility with only 6 staff in your team. So we've had loads of volunteers. So we've bought masks, obviously, because we're tentatively looking at opening. Is there going to be a legislation that I'm confused about this legislation of when are people meant to wear masks? Like I've got them, so I know it's right, but I still don't know, you know, when and where. Like it's a bit unclear to me, the masks. And then I've got another question, but maybe start with one.
Yeah. So we had looked at the advice from Scottish Leisure Networking Group. There's no real requirement to wear a mask. The advice is you can wear a mask from Scottish Government, I believe. Unless you're a healthcare professional, I don't think there's any requirement to wear a mask. But what we got from the Scottish Leisure Networking Group, that to instill confidence in your users, it might be worth looking at what PPE would be required. Any larger
because we're
facility.
teaching, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
You know, sometimes they're kids, and I just think, you know, if I don't want to scare them, we've got like little horse patterns put on the mask, so they're all very cute and. Yeah,
it's a difficult one. It's understanding what the context is, and it's interesting. I got a very similar question from my sister. She's down south, and the guys are looking at moving to the next stage, and they don't know how they can actually do that one-to-one teaching with the horse and the rein. So. Yeah.
So there's that, and then one thing's an add-on. Like I've been using Splosh. It's the most environmentally friendly, cheapest product I've found. You pay for the bottle, and you only order refills. You never need to use other spray bottles. You don't have to keep buying new ones, and it's all environmentally friendly. And it comes posted to you in envelopes, and you can subscribe, and it's good for the environment and doesn't cause any issues on the skin, but still. So that may be something people look into. It's called Splosh. But my other question was, so essentially in England, I get loads of stuff through from the ABRS saying Sports England are helping riding centres. I don't get that from Sports Scotland, unfortunately, in terms of the same support. Even in terms of the British Equestrian Federation, you know, there's an issue with how much is put there and not in Scotland and towards Scotland. So my answer is we've been given all these guidelines, so I'm now tentatively looking at phasing. I've sat and rewritten my price list. I've thought about having a member system and a non-member system. But actually, when I phone my insurance, we won't cover our overheads. There is no, so what advice is going to keep coming out? Because to cover insurance and liability based on the restrictions we're given, you'll not make it, you know, it's actually not going to make money. So where's that support? You know, are Sports Scotland going to step in and help these facilities? Or, yeah, where's that support going to come from? Because we're going to try, but I'm very doubtful that will make anything due to insurance costs.
Yeah. I can't answer that question. There's nothing in place at the moment.
Right.
The support, the support that's been coming forward is through the third sector, and Judith can probably give you more information on that if it's going to carry on, or what support's coming next from that area.
Sports England are quite good. That's the thing I feel when I get my membership stuff through. They seem to be doing loads, you know, for their riding skills, but it just is not, I don't get, because I get them through Mulla, I don't get the same up here. Like I just see how this helped English riding skills, and I think, but where's the Scottish? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. It's not like I go, it's just, I'm just genuinely a bit confused.
Our first lot of support went directly to the Scottish governing body, so Horse Scotland would have got the support to maintain their funding. Right. And we're now looking at what's happening next. We've been looking at business intelligence to see where there's gaps, and we'll see what that looks like. Our strategic planning team are dealing with that right now. Okay.
Thanks, Danielle. Bill Smith, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to ask a question. Non-contact sports like golf have reopened, and I'm just wondering what plans there is to see what we can learn from them.
So we're currently going through scenario planning in golf, tennis and bowls are all involved in that. It's interesting, I was on a call this morning with my colleagues and some of the bowls clubs are actually not opening. I don't know if that's similar to golf. It's just not, it doesn't work without the access to the indoors, with the risks of potential travel distances and things like that. So at the moment we've got very limited information. But we, as I say, we are working on the scenario planning for the next few phases. So if we get lessons learned from that, hopefully we can put stuff together on our website. Is that okay, Bill?
Thank you.
I've got another question here on the chat. Is there guidance on what should be added to first aid kits in terms of PPE and guidance on CPR? They work in remote outdoor environments. That's from Kirsten. Yeah,
There is, and I can't remember the name of the group that do the training for CPR. They had advice and guidance on it. It was in the RYA initial plan. I'll find that out, Judith, and maybe we could email it out to the guys, because it might have the additional information on first aid kits.
Perfect. Thank you. Does that answer your question for now, Kirsten? Is that okay? Yep. Thank you. Anyone else got hands up for a question? Or any that I've missed on the chat? It's quite hard to see everyone across the 2 pages. If anybody just wants to come in, if they've got a question, feel free. Nope. I think it maybe looks like we're done with questions. All right, if there's no more questions just now, certainly once you've had time to reflect on the session, and if you do go and review the guidance and have a look and you've got more questions from that, then you can either contact the facilities team at Sport Scotland directly. I'm sure their details will be on that, or you can contact me and I can put you in touch with Sport Scotland or to whoever might be able to answer your question. Graham, is there anything else that you want to mention?
Just like to thank everybody for turning up today. That's really good. Thanks for your questions.
Thanks, Graham. Thank you for coming along and for giving us the session. I think hopefully it's been really valuable for people. Thanks for all the chat questions that have come through. People have been sharing links. There's quite a bit there about cleaning products and stuff, so we'll pull everything from the chat out and we'll circulate that after the meeting. So it's obviously difficult in an ever-changing landscape to talk about reopening facilities and what exactly that's going to look like and what exactly is going to be needed as things move on. But certainly if anybody does have any questions or concerns, then do get in touch with me or with Graham or the facilities team at Sport Scotland. So yeah, basically thank you from me to everyone for coming on to the session and for contributing. Thank you, Graham.
Can I ask Graham one more question?
Yeah.
Sorry. So hey Graham, obviously we're building a new facility. I've been working with Stephen Anderson.
Yes.
This is a gentle nudge, I don't know if he's not working, but I have resent our business plan with cash flows so we can try and start to get the site moving, and I've not heard anything. So we're unable to start any of the claim process because we can't. Right. I just wanted to make sure that what we're submitting is actually there's no point in me starting work if I can't come back. Sorry.
I'll give him a nudge, don't worry.
Sorry, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Graham. Just to mention as well, the Sport newsletter will be coming out tomorrow. It might be going to some people's junk, so although you might think it is junk and you're happy to leave it there, you may also want to check just in case you haven't been receiving it. And I'll be in touch in due course with any other sessions and things that we're organising for the Sport SEN. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.